we have a wonderful presentation for you. Grigory Shershnevsky is going to speak about his experience in the Holocaust. Both he and his wife are here as both survivors, and he has a presentation for you. So please do the right thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, it is my privilege to speak to such wide audience, and I really appreciate you inviting me. You already heard that my name is Grigory Shershnevsky. Me and my wife both are refugees from former Soviet Union. Such country ceased to exist long before neither one of you were born. And we both are Holocaust survivors. What you see on screen is centerpiece of Holocaust Memorial in Miami Beach, Florida. If during summer vacation some of you will have chance to be in Miami area, I suggest you visit that memorial. It's very, very touching, very, very impressive. When a couple of years ago, Holocaust Resource Center asked me to join its speaker bureau, and I started working on my presentation like today, I asked my friends and my relatives, what creates that word Holocaust? There were different suggestions, but I selected what told me something, which is prisoner numbered tattoo on their forearm and children in striped robes behind barbed wire. You may consider me lucky. I don't have that number, and for a few months I was behind barbed wire. I was too small to wear anything but diapers. And I'm not sure, I don't know, if any of Buffalo area Holocaust survivors have that number, and if any of them were forced to wear that striped robe. Exactly 5 years ago, a team of Buffalo News correspondents decided to interview every single Buffalo area Holocaust survivors, and on Holocaust Remembrance Day, Buffalo News came up with 10-page insert which calls Survivors. There were 28 stories of different Holocaust survivors. And those stories are as different as life itself may be different. There was a story of Dr. Saul Messenger. He was 7 years old when his family boarded ill-fated liner St. Louis. I hope at least some of you know St. Louis story, but to benefit everyone else, I will briefly tell the story of St. Louis. It's German sea ship which left Germany, Hamburg, Germany in May of 1939 with over 900 Jewish refugees trying to escape Holocaust in Germany. Every passenger on that ship had Cuban entry visa, but when St. Louis reached Havana, Cuba, Cuban government revoked all those visas and allowed only 24 Jewish immigrants to stay in Cuba, those with very close relatives like parents or children, and 4 passengers with Spanish roots. Captain had no choice but to turn north to the United States. Unfortunately, United States Coast Guards prevented St. Louis from docking in any of American ports. St. Louis continued north to Cuba, to Canada, and Canadian government did exactly the same, did not allow St. Louis to die in any Canadian ports. Captain had no choice but to turn around and go back to Europe. Luckily, few countries like Belgium, France, Great Britain allow some passengers to disembark. The Soul Messenger family managed to get out of ship in Belgium, moved to France, and eventually ended up in the United States, so thus he survived. But over 200 passengers had no place to go, and they returned to Germany, and unfortunately most of them perished in Holocaust. There was a story of Holocaust survivor Dr. Herman Stone. He was born at birthplace of Nazi Party, Munich, in 1925. So he was 13 years old when he eyewitnessed Crystal Nights. You probably heard it. Excuse me. It happened on November 9th and 10th of 1938 when anti-Jewish riots started all over Germany. Excuse me. Dozens and dozens of synagogues were burned down. Dozens of Jews were murdered. Thousands of Jewish businesses were destroyed. And Dr. Herman Stone saw it with his own eyes. Luckily, his family managed to get out of Germany and ended up in the United States, so he survived. And that was my story. And my story was different. But my story was different in the sense that it was not about me. I was too small to realize my suffering or suffering of my parents. My story is about few people who at worst time in history refused to be bystanders, who were risking their lives trying to save their Jewish friends, Jewish relatives, but more often totally unknown to them Jews. I hope some of you go to church, and some of you maybe even go to Sunday religion schools, so maybe some of you know last words Jesus Christ said on cross before he died. According to scripture, he said 7 words on 7 phrases. And according to Matthew and Mark, his 4th word was, my God, why have you forsaken me? But as you know, Jesus Christ didn't speak English. He spoke ancient Hebrew language, Aramaic, and he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, lama, or why? Why, said Jesus Christ on cross before he died? And that question, why, hangs over Jewish faith for centuries and centuries. Long before Jesus Christ was born, it's starting with slavery in Egypt, through destruction of Jewish temple 600 years before Jesus Christ was born, through crusaders, through Inquisition, through expulsion of Jews from Spain in 1492, through pogroms or riots against Jews in Russia, in Ukraine, in Poland, and eventually through Holocaust. Why? Why life of this little child had to be cut short? Why Germans, most civilized nation of Europe, became nation of murderers? Why local population in many countries, not at all, but in many countries, at best were bystanders and at worst actively participated in Holocaust? Take a look on this picture. you see this lady in white blouse? She is smiling. Why? Because it's so funny to watch Jews on their knees picking up garbage with their fingers from the street. It's so funny. I am not Holocaust scholar to answer those why. And even if I was, we don't have enough time, but I have my own why, which I always ask my audience, and I'm asking you today. I hope that all of you, maybe some family tragedy, have loving, caring mothers. Some of you have siblings, some of you have cousins, uncles, and so my question is, why I was deprived of it? Why I was deprived of knowing my own mother, feeling her love for me? Why I was deprived of knowing and befriending my cousins? All of them, and I emphasize all of them, on my mother's side and my father's side, were murdered. They were 3, 4 years old. On my mother's side, they were murdered in Ukraine with their parents. On my father's side, in Lithuania. Why? And answer is very simple. I am a Jew. And my parents were Jews. And my cousins were Jews. And as such, according to Nazi ideology, we were not human. We were worse than garbage, worse than rats. And we have to be not just simply murdered, we have to be exterminated from the face of the earth. Very simple answer. On May 14, 1948, State of Israel was reborn after 2,000 years. And the same day, its capital, Tel Aviv, was bombed. And next day, armies of 6 Arab countries invaded newborn state. But Israel prevailed, and what we call war of independence is one war of independence. And new state had a lot of goals. Start from scratch, building its social life, political life, industry, agriculture. But one goal, holy goal for them, was to save and prevent memory of 6 million Jews perished in Holocaust. And just 5 years later, in Jerusalem, they opened Holocaust Museum Memorial, which calls Yad Vashem. And what you see on picture is eternal flame hall in Yad Vashem. And cast in stone on the floor are names of most horrible places in the human history. Auschwitz, Buchenwald, Majdanek, Sobibor, known all over the world, and few less known places. I will show you right here. You can see letter B-A-B upside down. It's first letter of Babi Yar. What is Babi Yar? It's a ravine near capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, where during 2 days, and I emphasize 2 days, September 29th and September 30th, over 30,000, don't get confused, 30,000 Ukrainian Jews were murdered. This is what is Babi Yar. And another name, also upside down, right here, Panar. It's forest near capital of Lithuania, Vilnius, where during the war over 70,000 Lithuanian Jews were murdered. This is map of Europe, and you can see Poland Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Belarus, Ukraine, Hungary, soil of those countries are soaked in blood of innocent Jews. You can see picture of Soviet Union leader Joseph Stalin. He led Soviet Union from 1924 through 1953. And what he says, the death of one man is a tragedy. The death of millions is a statistic. Yes, it's statistic for murderers like Stalin, who killed millions of his own people, or like Hitler, who started World War II, which resulted in 60 million deaths, among them 6 million of Jews. But it should not be statistic to any decent human being, you and me, because a million consists of individuals, children, parents, grandparents, with their dreams, with their hopes, with their loves. No, it's not statistic. You can see on screen table that shows absolute number and percentage of Jewish population in many of European countries. And on the top, you can read Finland. Only 7 Jews perished during Holocaust, even so Finland was ally of Germany. But when Gestapo announced that they will start transferring Finland Jews to Auschwitz, their commander-in-chief, Marshal Monaghan, flatly refused to allow it. He says, it will demoralize my army, and I am not allowing it. But secret police, Finland secret police arrested 4 Jews who escaped Austria, and 2 of them to Gestapo. 7 of them perished, only 1 survived. After the war, a group of religion Finns went to Palestine and built a village and named it Memory of 8. Next, you can see Denmark. When Nazis announced that they will start transferring Denmark Jews to Auschwitz, within 2 weeks, government, religious organization, private citizens managed to collect enough money to hire fishermen to transfer 7,200 of Jews and 600 non-Jewish spouses to neutral Sweden. When those Jews came back after war, in their apartment flowers were watered. This was the honor of nation. And take a look at the bottom. Between 95%. It's very difficult to imagine numbers, but I was told there were about 800 of you here. So if this was Jewish school in 1941 in Lithuania, at the end of the war, and you can look around, only 40 of you, out of 800, only 40 of you would stay alive. This, how horrible it was. It's been established estimate that of 265,000 Jews living in Lithuania in June 21, 254,000, or 95% were murdered during the German occupation. No other Jewish community in Nazi-occupied Europe was so comprehensively destroyed. By number of murdered Jews, you may think that, wow, it's not a huge country. This Lithuania is, by size, half New York State. This woman, her name is Ruta Vanagaitė. She is Lithuanian, and from childhood, she was brought up with stories about her heroic grandfather, who in 1939, during Soviet occupation of Lithuania, resisted and fought occupants. And after war, when Soviet power came back, he resisted Soviet power, was arrested, and he perished in Russian concentration camps. So in 1991 or 92, when Lithuania gained independence after the fall of Soviet Union, and KGB archives were open, she decided to file on her grandfather to read about his heroic past. And she found that file. And she was horrified that she found documents, and she found a letter from Gestapo thanking her grandfather for his participation in a committee which was coming up with list of known Jews and submitting that list to Gestapo. And according to that letter, as thank you, he was given 2 Russian prisoners of war to work on his farm. She was horrified. Her world turned upside down, and she decided, wait a minute, if my heroic father, the grandfather, was participating, maybe he didn't kill personally, but participating in murder of Jews, what about the rest? What about my neighbor? What about his neighbor? And she started search all over that small country, Lithuania, and she found 280 places where Jews were murdered. Unfortunately, on many of those places, no one ever saw German soldiers. They were murdered by their neighbor Lithuanians. And she came up with a book which calls Musiškai in Lithuanian language or Ours. And the idea of that book was that those Jews who were murdered were our tailors, our doctors, our lawyers, our neighbors. And those who murdered them also were our shoemakers, our tailors, our doctors. We murdered it. Of course, the book was not very welcome in Lithuania. In 1942, murders of Jews were going full blown. But according to the opinion of top German leadership, it was not productive. Shooting, murdering with exhaust gas in trucks, too slow. So in January of 1942, 16 Nazi leaders assembled in this pillar to discuss how to speed up the process, and the process they call final solution. How to speed up? How many more concentration camps have to be built? How many more crematoriums have to be built? How much more that gas cyclone B has to be ordered? And to lead that effort, they appointed officer by American standards, Lieutenant Colonel Adolf Eichmann. And he did a great job. Construction of new concentration camp was speeding up, new crematoriums raised, new orders for Cyclone B were placed, and murdering of Jews really speeded up. When war was over, Adolf Eichmann disappeared. Intelligence services of all Allied forces were looking for him, but could not find him. And only in 1958, In 1958, Israeli Secret Service Mossad located Adolf Eichmann in Argentina. It took them 2 years to prepare the operation. In the 1960s, they managed to smuggle Adolf Eichmann from Argentina and place him on trial in Israel. He was recognized as still guilty in crimes against humanity and was executed in Israel. But at that conference, they also established goals. How many more Jews have to be murdered in various countries? And you can see in the beginning of war, in Lithuania was 265,000. Their goal was just 34,000 remaining had to be murdered. They did not occupy the United Kingdom, but their goal was to eliminate 330,000. And take a look here, Albania, 200. Just 200 Jews. How did they know that they were just 200? Well, computers did not exist at that time. Predecessor of computer punch card machines were produced by our IBM company. And to our shame, IBM company supplied Gestapo with those punch card machines, and they analyzed population count in every single country, so they knew how many Jews were in every single country. I remind you about the table of different countries. Actually, Albany has to be on the top. Not even one Jew was turned over to Gestapo. Albany is country with mixed religion. Some part of the population Christian, part of the population Muslim. Disregarding of religion differences, Albanian population was hiding all those 200 Jews during the war, and not even one perished in Holocaust. You can see that on March 23, 2000, Pope John Paul II visited Yad Vashem. You can see him praying. He was praying for souls of 6 million Jews perished in Holocaust. But also, he was praying for souls and well-being of those who are still alive of over 26,000 people who refused to be bystanders. As I already mentioned, those people who were risking their lives trying to save their Jewish relatives, friends, and totally unknown to the Jews. Some names are known all over the world. Some are known only to those who survived sex of those heroes. When Yad Vashem was just established and just few names became known, they established alleys and planted trees in the honor of such person. But eventually they ran out of room to place trees, so they built alleys, and along alleys, stone monuments like this, with name of those 26,000 heroes of Holocaust. And as I said, some names are well known, some just few people know about them. What you see on screen is another very unusual Holocaust memorial. It calls empty chairs. On that plaza, it's located in Polish city Krakow. On that plaza, Krakow Jews were forced to assemble to be transported nearby concentration camp Auschwitz. Some were waiting for trucks for a couple hours and they were taken away right away. Some waited for a couple days. So families managed to find chairs, at least for their elders, to sit on something. But when they were taken to Auschwitz, only empty chairs remained on that plaza. Luckily, not all Krakow Jews perished in Holocaust, and over 1,200 of them were saved by this gentleman, Oskar Schindler. He is the best known about all among those 26,000, thanks to Steven Spielberg, Oscar-winning movie Schindler List. He saved 12,000 Jews by employing them in his kitchen utensil factories near Krakow. There is expression, if you murder one person, you murder the world. If you save one person, you save the world. And you can see on the sample of Oskar Schindler, he saved 1,200 Jews, but latest information, official information, found from 2012, over 8,500 descendants of Schindler Jews were living all over the world. Today, problem is that number is twice as big. This is what it means to save the world. Irene Sandler knows Germans appointed her to take care of health condition in Warsaw Ghetto. Not that they were concerned of health of those Jews in ghetto, they were concerned to make sure that there is no epidemic disease which can spread all over the city, or the rest of the city. Using her position, she managed to smuggle out of Warsaw Ghetto over 2,500 Jewish children and place them with families outside of ghetto. She was caught, she was tortured, her legs were broken, but luckily she survived, and afterwards she is 3 times nominated for Nobel Peace Prize. Another very unusual Holocaust memorial, empty shoes. In 1944, out of 800,000 Hungarian Jews were already murdered in Auschwitz. 200,000 still remain in Budapest ghetto, and pro-Nazi party Cross Arrow decided to get rid of remnants of ghetto, so they were taking a group of 60 Jews, tied them up with rope, brought them to the shore of the Naga River, most beautiful river in Europe, and shot just one person. And the person following the water pool, second and third and so on. So one person was shot, 58 rounds. But before killing them, they forced them to take off their shoes because shoes were rarity during the war and they could sell them on the black market. But again, not all Hungarian Jews perished in Holocaust, and 4,000 of them were saved by Sweden diplomat Raoul Wallenberg. He was working day and night issuing passports, Swedish passport, because, as I said, Sweden was a neutral country, and person having Sweden passport most likely could survive. Unfortunately, when Budapest was liberated by Red Army, he was arrested, accused of being spy, and he disappeared in Russian concentration camps. And even today, when KGB archives are open, researchers cannot find any document related to his fate. Karl Lutz, Swiss diplomat, he had a lot of assistants, so altogether they managed to issue over 62,000 Swiss passports saving over 62,000 Jews. Tibor Baransky, priest in Hungary, when he found out that his friend's family, Jewish family, will be transferred to concentration camp, he went to leader of Hungarian church and asked for advice how to save that family. And advice was, save not just one family, save as many as possible. So Tibor Baransky was hiding Jews in monasteries, in churches, and he's credited with saving over 3,000 Hungarian Jews. But when Hungary was liberated and communist government was established, as being priest, he was arrested and placed and put in jail for 5 years. When he was released, he managed to leave Hungary to France, and from France eventually to United States, and he ended up living here in Buffalo, New York. And he passed away just a couple of years ago. Frederick Wright, what we call him American Schindler, he was American correspondent working in Paris, but when Paris was occupied, he moved to Marseille, France, which was not occupied, established connection with French resistance, and with their help, he managed to transfer from France through Spain, through Portugal, and using Rockefeller Fund, transferred to United States over 4,000 of Hungarian Jews. Among those 4,000 was world-renowned painter Marc Chagall, whose stained glass windows stay and will stay forever in our National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. And this is most amazing story, Sir Nicholas Winton. He was born in 1909 in Great Britain, a successful banker, and in 1938 he decided to spend winter in Europe skiing in the European Alps. On the way to vacation, he stopped by to meet his friend in Czechoslovakia, in Prague, capital of Czechoslovakia. And he saw little children with Star of David on their clothes, walking on street, not on sidewalk, on pavement. He asked what it's all about, why children are walking on the street. And his friend explained this as a Jewish children. Jews are not allowed to walk on the sidewalk, they are allowed only to walk on pavement, and sooner or later they will be transferred to concentration camps. Winton could not stand it. He got in touch with his mother in Great Britain, asked her to find families which agreed to accept children. She found a number of such families, and using trains, Mr. Winton got groups of children like this, and overall he managed to send on trains 669 children to Great Britain. Last train, biggest group, 250 children supposed to leave Prague on train September 1st, 1939. But if you remember, at that day Germany invaded Poland. It was beginning of World War II. All the borders were closed, and unfortunately most of those children perished in Holocaust. Mr. Winton went back to Great Britain, joined British Army, took part in World War II, and after victory in World War II, he came back home, created family, and never ever mentioned what he has done. 50 years later, in 1988, his wife found an attic box with children pictures, names, addresses of she asked him what it's all about. And only then he told story. She was amazed. She shared that story with BBC, and one day Mr. Winton was invited to BBC show dedicated to World War II. He was not surprised because he took part in World War II. He was a veteran, and not so many veterans were allowed 50 years later. So he went there, and in the middle of show, he realized that moderator was talking about him, what he has done. And moderator suddenly asked audience, if there are children saved by Mr. Winton, please stand up. There were not children anymore. There were parents, grandparents, but all of them were alive thanks to Mr. Winton. And today, and hopefully forever, on Prague main train station will stay this monument in his memory. In 2003, Queen Elizabeth knighted him, so he became Sir Nicholas. But most important, God awarded him with long life. He lived 106 years and passed away just recently in 2015. If you remember, I emphasized that those heroes, those who refused to be bystanders, were risking their lives. 5 years ago, Buffalo Library hosted a small exhibition dedicated to memory of Ulma family of Poland. It was family of 6 little children, father and pregnant mother. They could not see what was going on with their Jewish neighbors. They refused to be bystanders. And they were hiding on their farm 8 Jewish neighbors. But they were betrayed, and they were reported to Gestapo. Gestapo came over, murdered all those 8 Jews, 6 little children, father and pregnant mother. Murdered entire family. So it's not empty word to emphasize their heroic action. It's really they were risking their lives. This brings me to my personal story. I was born in Lithuania. I'm one of those 5% lucky alive. Just a couple months before war started. As you know, Germany invaded Soviet Union at 4 o'clock in the morning on June 22nd, 1941. And just 4 days later, my city was already occupied. And right away, those famous Nuremberg laws, some of you probably know what that are. They are laws which limited or taking away all the civil rights, citizen rights of Jews were implemented. Jews were grabbed on the streets of their residences, on their workplaces, and taken right away to the place I showed you, Panava, for execution. But to grab Jews on the streets was very, very non-productive. So German Nazis ordered Jews from the entire city to move into small areas of the city, what we call ghettos. You see, ghetto number 2, just 3 streets. Ghetto number 1 is a little bit bigger. Ghetto number 2 existed just 1 month. Within 1 month, children and elders were murdered. Only people capable of working were moved to Ghetto 1. My family was forced to move to Ghetto 1. My father, my mother, and me, I was 5 months old. Just months later, when Ghetto 2 was liquidated. My parents found out that all my cousins already are dead, and they realized that they will not be able to keep me alive for a long time. So they were trying to find ways to smuggle me out of ghetto. But it's very, very difficult even to think about it. All those streets of Ghetto 1 were blocked, and only one gate was through which Jews were taken to their workplaces in the morning and taken back at night. And it was guarded by Gestapo and by Jewish policemen. There were some hidden pathways through sewers, through the underground basements, but even if you succeed where you go, you're surrounded by anti-Semitic population, which most likely will turn you over to Gestapo anyway, or just simply kill you right on the spot. But my parents continue looking for ways to get to smuggle me out of ghetto, and eventually through their friend, they found out about a woman. Her name is Alexandra Zhevetsky, living in the city, who was deeply religious Catholic woman, Polish descent, who was totally non-political. She didn't care for fascism, she didn't care for communism, she cared for children. She could not see orphan walking or laying or sitting on the street without trying to help him. If she saw orphan, she took the child to her basement apartment, at least fed him, and tried to find family which agreed to take care of the child. My parents managed to get in touch with her, and she agreed to take in Jewish child. And from Uma family, you can realize she was risking her life of all children living in her basement, and of course my own life. But she decided she had to do it. Her religion told her she had to save child. It didn't matter Jewish or not Jewish. My mother was forced to work as cleaning lady in various city offices, and because every day she had to go to different offices, she had to carry with her cleaning supplies, buckets, cleaning rods, and so on. So a specific day in middle of November, when I was about 7 months old, my parents put me into that bucket, covered me with rocks, and my mother, as every day was taken to work, took the bucket with her. At some specific place, agreed with Miss Alexandra, my mother just dropped the bucket, pick up empty bucket, and continue. I don't know if you kids can imagine feeling of my mother, as adults can imagine it. Mother sacrificing her love for her only child with hope, not belief, with hope to save his life. And I ended up in basement apartment of Miss Alexandra Zhevetsky. Now, this is a war. Every person in city is registered to prevent guerrillas, fighters, showing up, and so on. And now Miss Alexandra has 7-month-old child. So luckily I did not look as Jewish child. So she took me to City Hall under German power and told them that she found child on the steps of church and she wants to adopt the child. And she selected this Christian saint, Saint Stanislaus of Kostu, as my guardian angel, and she registered me as Stanislav Martin Kostu, Polish child, Christian child. And Jewish child, Greg suddenly became Polish Christian child, Stanislavus. I don't know, and I was not the only one child in her basement. I have no idea how she managed to feed us. Probably some neighbors helped her, how she managed to dress us. But on this picture, I look pretty well fed, pretty well dressed. This girl is oldest child, orphan living with Miss Alexandra, and this picture was taken near wall of ghetto. Somehow Miss Alexandra communicated with my parents and arranged this stroll at time when my parents already went back from work in ghetto, so they could see that I was alive and well. In 1943, rumors spread that ghetto will be liquidated. So Miss Alexandra realized that I will be staying with her for the rest of our lives. So regardless of who win, who lose war, she needed a piece of paper for me. She registered me, but she never got my birth certificate. She went back to City Hall and obtained the birth certificate. And you can call him fake. You can call him real because it's a real document. And it says on the left-hand side my name, Stanislav Marian Kostka, in the middle, parents unknown. So now she was saying, she had document for me, and she considered me at the time her own son, so she knew that her son will be with her forever. Those rumors about liquidation of ghetto, of course, spread all over the ghetto, and underground fighters face choice. Either fight inside of ghetto, which will lead to murder of innocent Jews, or try to escape and continue fighting from the forest. They selected to leave ghetto. One of such group was led by my parents. They were active in underground fight, so they led a group of 150 Jews escaping through underground passages. And when they reached forest, they were betrayed, there was ambush, and out of 150, only 7 people survived. My father survived. My mother was captured, taken to Panama, and she was murdered there. My father reached forest and fought Nazis until liberation of city. This is him after city was liberated. During fighting for the liberation of city, in our courtyard was fighting, and Miss Alexandra through basement window, which was bigger, twice probably like our basement windows, that someone fell down in our courtyard. She didn't care if it was German and Russian. She saw human being in need of help. She managed to get out. She was 60 years old. She managed to get out of our basement apartment, pulled the person to basement window, and eventually pulled him into basement, took care of his wounds, and realized that it was Russian. So when city was liberated, she reported that she has a Russian soldier in her basement. So immediately maybe medical help came over, and they realized it was not soldier, it was major of Russian army. And from political standpoint, it was just a great event. Local population saves life of liberator. So military newspaper sent correspondent to tell story about the heroic act. And when correspondent got to the basement and saw bunch of little children who were too little to even to be her great-grandchildren, he was surprised and asked her to tell story. Who are those children? And Miss Alexander told him story, how she saved me, how she saved another children, and you can see this cute blind kid, it's me. But it's me. And to my right, another girl, typical Jewish girl. Her name is Gitela Gitterman. She was born in ghetto. Her parents already didn't have working permits, which means they were destined to be executed. So they managed to build false wall in the room they occupied, and during the search, they were hiding behind that wall. But newborn baby was crying. So during short search, couple hours, her grandfather covered her mouth with his mouth, giving her a chance to breathe. But next search, months later, lasted 2 days. Her family managed to find medication which puts you to sleep like anesthesia. So that newborn, maybe 2 months old girl, was under that medication for 2 days. Most likely she would never wake up. But as soon as search was over, her parents managed to smuggle her to Miss Alexander. But to take typical Jewish girl to City Hall, she could not risk. So Miss Alexander built doll, size of newborn child, and took the doll to City Hall. You can realize how risky it was. And when she entered the room, she said, stay away, please. I found this dying child on the street. She definitely is ill with some kind of infection disease, so don't come close. She will die probably in hours, in a couple hours, maybe a couple days if she is lucky. But as being as religious as I am, I have to give that dying child human burial. But to bury her, I need first her birth certificate and her death certificate. When people heard that infection disease, no one really want to come close and take a look. They register her birth, they register her death, gave her 2 pieces of paper, get out of her. Having birth certificate, Miss Alexandra managed to place her into Catholic hospital and save her life. This is Gitela Gittelman in 1968 with her family. This is what it means not to be bystander. And I outlined in 1980, mother of Gitela Gittelman submitted testimony to Yad Vashem, and Miss Alexandra Zhivetsky was awarded status of righteous among nations. Outlined in red is her name, Zhivetsky Alexandra. This is what it means not to be bystander. If Miss Alexandra didn't care if she was bystander, neither Gitela Gittelman nor me were alive. Hate doesn't have limits. Hate affects everyone. And you can read what Martin Niemöller, Lutheran pastor, said during the war, actually, after war. They came first for communists, and I didn't speak up because I was not communist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak up because I was not trade unionist. Then they came for Catholics, and I did not speak up because I was Protestant. Then they came for me, and by that time, no one was left to speak up. what it means? Speak up if you see unfairness, if you see any kind of hate. Don't be bystander. It doesn't matter what kind of hate, anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, anti-Muslim. Speak up. Albert Einstein, the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. Albert Einstein. So don't be bystander. Speak up against hate, against bullying, against anything what you consider wrong. Don't be bystander. Speak up. And most important, there is evil in the world, but the world is not evil. And it's up to you, young people, to make world even better, brighter place for everyone. Thank you very much. As I said, I definitely saw, but I was 6, 7 months old. I was smuggled out of ghetto at 7 months old. I lived with Miss Alexandra through the rest of the war. I was 3, 4 years old. I definitely saw, but I was a child, so it didn't make any effect on me.
How long were you raised by Alexandra?
I was taken to Miss Alexandra in the middle of November of 1944. Oh, I'm sorry, 1941. City was liberated in the middle of 1944. My father came back. But when he came to Miss Alexandra, he says, "You have my son." And she says, "Sir, I never saw you in my life. This boy is my son, Stasik, it's not a Grigory." So it took another year to my father to find eyewitnesses who submitted testimony that he was really my father. So actually, I was with her almost 5 years.
How did your mother know what happened?
During that ambush, it was night, it was dark, the group was surrounded. I heard that story from my father. He says that suddenly they were facing bridge. They had to cross bridge to reach forest. And they sent, when darkness fell, they sent 2 guys to cross the bridge to make sure that it was okay. They came back, and the group started moving. As my father says, from all the sides, machine guns started shooting. He fell down and was screaming the name of my mother, but it was total chaos. It was impossible to find anyone. Most of the people probably were killed right on the spot. Later, some ghetto resident told my father that they saw a truck with 2 women in the back, and one of those women was my mother. So they were taken to another and murdered them.
What did your father
My father survived. In the morning, 7 people found each other, and when they were hiding, and suddenly they saw young guy walking through the forest. So my father says, we have to find out what was going on and where to go. 6 people refused. My father says, okay, you hide, and if something bad happened, you just run away. My father met that boy and started telling him stories. The boy says, listen, I know what happened here. I know who you are. I know way to partisan group. So I will come back, will bring you the food, and I will leave you. And group with my father was waiting for him, fighting in forest. And the next night he really came back, carrying some bag with food, and he brought them without any issue to partisan forest. And it was 43, April 43, so for a whole year, my father fought with partisans. They raided German army zones, their warehouses. They fought, and when the city was liberated, he was trying to find what happened to my mother, but he didn't find any documents, anything. So he started fighting to get me, that's all. And he continued living. He passed away in 1970.
Thank you, everybody, so much. You were such a wonderful audience. This is the biggest group that we have spoken to, I think, ever. So this is absolutely wonderful. And if you have any more questions, you can reach out to Mr. Smith, and he can contact me, and we will get those questions